Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. We still have some folks trickling in, so we'll give everyone a minute or two to get settled in. In the meantime, why don't everybody put the school they're with in the audience chat button to the right? And if it's different, the school that you rep or your alma mater or your favorite team. We'll see what kind of crowd we have here. I'll kick it off.
If we got any Buckeyes in the room. There we go, Brandon.
Awesome. I got SUNY. Go Broncos.
There we go.
A lot of Ohio State fans.
We're everywhere.
My family's all Penn State, so I guess we'll have to play nice today, I suppose.
The fall's going to be fun. Colorado State.
Awesome. I was a big fan of Colorado State whenever they played Colorado last season. That was a fun game.
Yeah, who do you got? Who do you got to win this year? Just a quick before we jump in. National championship.
Probably Ohio State, as much
Okay.
as I'm going to say it. Just to keep you off my back when I'm in the office, I'll go with Ohio State.
All right, sounds good.
Awesome. We'll give everyone one and a half more minutes, and then we'll jump right in. We have a really good presentation today, so we're excited to share it with you all.
Culture Wooster. Awesome. I grew up close to there. I lived in Sunbury, Ohio, a little bit north of Columbus.
Wesleyan, awesome. I met someone from Wesleyan last week, or an alum from Wesleyan. Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and kick it off. Feel free to keep the colleges rolling in. I always love to see the college pride and see where everyone's calling in from. But just as a quick intro, my name is Devin. I am on our enterprise sales team here at ScreenCloud.
Hey, my name's Casey. I'm a solutions engineer at ScreenCloud and a part of the professional services team.
And today we're really excited to walk you through Smart Screen, Smarter Campus and what digital signage can look like for higher ed and universities, as well as call out some challenges that we've typically seen and how to best connect with your students. So first things first, as you all have some have explored already, you have the audience chat where we are throwing in our colleges, go Vols. And below that, there is an option to submit a question. We will have a Q&A time at the end. If you submit them into the chat as well, we will get to them just as well. We'll just try to go in sequential order, but we will have plenty of time to answer Q&A, and there'll also be a way you can connect with us afterwards if you have a more in-depth discussion that you want to tackle. So real quick, just so you know who we are, and I know we have a lot of our existing users and customers on today, so welcome back, but just to give a face to a name, we are ScreenCloud. We are the largest digital signage exclusive provider in the enterprise space. We are based in London, have a big office here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Casey and I are out of, and have 11,000 happy active customers around the world across all industries. But higher ed and education and universities are certainly one of our largest and fastest growing pillars. On that note, you can see some, although definitely not an exhaustive list, some that are already using ScreenCloud today. All the military academies, public, private schools. And this also doesn't include a bunch of school systems and K through 12 private education that utilize ScreenCloud for a variety of reasons as well. And then across the bottom, you can see In addition to higher ed, we have plenty of corporate logos and users that use ScreenCloud day to day. So chances are you come across our screens pretty frequently. You just don't know it's us on the back end. The big three questions that I hope we can help you answer today and you walk away from thinking about in more depth are: how do I actually reach today's students and to some extent faculty as well? Why hasn't digital signage worked for me yet? We work with a lot of folks that come to us saying that, okay, well, we've tried digital signage, we've maybe even tried ScreenCloud before, but we didn't see the results that we wanted. And then on that note, what does it look like when digital signage is done right? What do I look for when evaluating digital signage? What are those key differentiators that are going to make a difference specific to higher ed and the unique dynamics there? Now, I always like to start off with this quote. So this George Bernard Shaw is an Irish playwright, but he said the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's actually taken place. And this encompasses really almost every conversation Casey and I have with our users and potential users, is that a lot of times in communications roles and in general in life, communication is thought of as like a checkbox. We put out the flyer, we sent out the email blast, we paid for the advertising space, check, move on. But communication is a two-way street, right? It has to be picked up, received, and processed by your intended audience as well too. And if we break down communication, we have what we call the ARC. So that stands for attention, retention, and cognition. I'll go into these three in a second just to set a baseline for what we'll talk about today, but feel free to take a picture or scan this QR code. It's a really cool study that influences a lot of the product decisions that we make here at ScreenCloud. Attention is exactly what you think it is. So I'm walking down a hall or I'm sitting in a cafe. What's going to draw my eyes the most? Is it going to be a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper on top of 10 other pieces of paper? Or is it going to be a 72-inch LED screen right above the checkout counter that I'm waiting in line for? Once you've got my attention, how am I going to retain this information? Is it by repetition? It's a hallway I walk through every day. Is it a really memorable or an interactive experience that I'm going to hold on to? And then cognition. Am I going to understand, is the content meant for me? Am I going to action on the content? Am I going to sign up for the event? Am I going to, enroll in classes on time? Things like that. Now, aside from just understanding what communication is like, let's also dive into what your audience is. And this is not anything new. Obviously, you are targeting students for the most part, although faculty and staff and visitors and donors are certainly under the umbrella. But when we think about college campuses today, at least in North America, we're talking about Gen Z, Zoomers, colloquially iPad babies. I'm actually technically a millennial by, a couple months, so I can play both sides of the fence here. But 2/3 of all students on campuses are in this 18 to 24 bracket, which is safely Gen Z. If we want to be a little generous and round up to really skirt the line between millennials, we get closer to 80% of all students are going to be Zoomers. And what this means is there's one number, and this is probably not a new number to you all. You've probably seen it in Vice News and Daily Mail, and it's kind of been the butt of all jokes. It's the avocado toast to millennials, but to Gen Z, 8 seconds. And what we've been told this 8 seconds means is that this is the attention span of Gen Z. And the real kicker on the joke is that it's the same as the attention span of a goldfish. Again, I'm sure you've heard this, but ultimately this is not true. What this 8 seconds ultimately is it's a highly tuned, highly efficient, highly sensitive, battle-tested spam filter that Zoomers and your students on campus use, right? They've grown up inundated with content, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, TVs, iPads, everywhere. Having a phone since 5 years old, they're inundated every day, all day with messaging. So they've gotten really good at refining what gets through to capture their attention. Now, believe it or not, and that number is actually 12 seconds for millennials. So it's only slightly better if you go up a generation. But believe it or not, in those 8 seconds, they're scanning, they're evaluating and deciding, is it worth my time? Should I move on? Once you capture that attention, though, Gen Z is able to focus better than other cohorts. So they can focus on a task for up to 50 minutes. And an example I like to give here is think of a YouTube video when you're in the browser, through the web app, and you hover over a video. It's about an 8-second thumbnail preview that you see. And that thumbnail is trying to get your attention, showing you all the key points in the video, even if it's an hour-long podcast or an hour-long Vice documentary or something. And when you click on it, we'll go down rabbit holes and watch the whole video end to end, enthralled in it. But you have to first earn our attention in that 8 seconds. When it comes to retention, over half could recall an ad that they saw for less than 2 seconds that resonated with them. And that's double the rate of those that are older than 40. And then as well as on retention, about 2/3 can retain visual information better than print information. It's about 15%. So then I'll turn this over, and I guess you can just answer yourselves wherever you're sitting. But when we look at something like this, which is every college campus ever, my alma mater included, at least 12 years ago it was, every lamppost, every wall, every bulletin board, every even stickers on a table in the student union has advertisements and little pull tabs that you can pull for more information. But they don't pass the 8-second filter is the real answer to this question. Likewise, if you've tried to upgrade to digital signage, I encourage you to walk around other universities around you, even not just universities, but stores and places too. You'll see them all the time, and you can check our CEO's LinkedIn because every week he posts digital signage that's not on, or it's blue screen, or it's July 9th today and it's showing content from May 30th about an event from May. So these are, in a sense, probably less effective than flyers sitting on a lamppost. And so the question is, what does pass this filter? How do I actually engage these Gen Z students? And there's a couple design choices. And listen, I'm not a design expert. There's people on this call that are much more skilled in creating and making captivating designs. But there are a few key things to keep in mind when you're building out screen content, at the very least with Screen Cloud. Motion is better than static. So motion graphics capture 400% more attention than static graphics. Less text and more visuals. So Gen Z can process visual information 60,000 times faster in their brain than information embedded within text. And interactivity is another one of the top 3. So not just blasting them with information, but this two-way street. So whether it's this trivia app that you see on the bottom here showing college trivia, or it's a donor wall that you're contributing money, and as you contribute, you actually see your class's bar increase. Or maybe it's a touchscreen kiosk showing you study abroad programs in the business school or something. Mobile native design, and this doesn't mean having your screen on a mobile device, although that's certainly nice if you can. But think about the environment that Gen Z and students are in every day. They're on their phones, they're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Visco. So vertical alignment, bold overlays, fast pacing, clear text, all of these need to be carried over to your signage. Same thing for short form video. So anything less than 60 seconds, native aspect ratios. And the one most important tip that always surprises people for some reason is subtitles. And you'll see it on the next page. But 80% of Gen Z will watch videos in silence with subtitles, even when they're by themselves. And most videos do have subtitles and closed captioning built in. Aside from the accessibility standpoint, it's a preference of Gen Z. You also need to make sure that you're including quick calls to action. So instead of saying scan here to learn more about how you can do X, Y, and Z, say scan here or learn more or take advantage with a very easy QR code. The two-way content along with interactivity is about the same thing. And contextual relevance is, well, we'll cover this later as well too, but even if you have one screen, you have multiple audiences walking by depending on the time of year or the time of day. So do you have a menu at 11? Do you have shuttle wait times at 5 p.m. at the end of the day? Do you have study tips from the library during exam season? If it's a game day weekend, do those signs then transform into wayfinding for visitors that wouldn't otherwise care about study tips? Does the content change if it's summer school versus normal year-round semesters? And then authenticity over polish. So 3/4 of Gen Z will tune out anything that feels too corporate. And while you are a school or a university, you still run the risk of having corporate material. So always opt for actual student pictures, even if it's a blurry selfie over a stock image. If you're UNC, my alma mater, instead of showing a basketball image, show Tyler Hansbrough covered in blood after dunking, or Vince Carter flying through the air, something that's actually authentic and relevant to your audience. On this piece, I just wanted to draw your attention again to that screens draw 4 times the attention of physical print. So I think we can all agree that in an ideal world, you're upgrading to screens, but one component is visual repetition and storing that in memory. So when we talk screen strategy, it's not just the content on the screen, it's where is the screen? Is it being passed every day in the hallway? Is it part of the routine of your students? Because again, you're competing for their attention and you have an 8-second elevator pitch. Otherwise, they're going to be looking down at their phone or talking to a friend or looking at another screen. And then the last thing before I toss it over to you, KC, is this is something that we all inherently do, whether we know about it or not, but it's called processing fluency. So incorporate this into your strategy as well, too, because Gen Z is very susceptible to it. If I give you option A and option B side by side in front of you on a table, you might prefer option A. But if I make it easier to learn about option B and consume the information about option B, even if you would have otherwise chosen option A, you're more likely to choose option B because it was easier to learn, easier to understand. And that can influence decision making, especially within Gen Z.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Devin. So even with all the right content and the things that Devin talked about in terms of the strategy and the types of content that we want to put on screen, we still see digital signage initiatives and rollouts fail or not be executed or not get the most value out of them. So the big question is why, and we have 3 key insights, and you kind of visualize them as it's a multi-tiered um, you know problem. But the first issue at the top is your internal comms teams at the top. You guys are already creating content for social media, for email newsletters, even for print, and you don't have the bandwidth or the tools to be able to easily create that content for the digital signage network. And then your next issue that you have is enabling the local creators. So the library is going to want to show different content than the business school, than the cafeteria, and having the structure and the ability to enable them to create that content without having to worry about them being designers or creating it on brand. So that's a major issue. And then rolling out all of these screens and managing this digital signage network is the IT team. Um, there's a lot of fear of, okay, what does the rollout look like in managing those screens? How do we manage the different departments, and what does it look like if there's an issue when everything's live and in production? How do we handle that? Um, so there's a lot of roadblocks when it comes to we're looking at rolling out a ubiquitous digital signage network for our campus. I just went through a couple of examples, but who's going to be managing the digital signage network? The ability to manage it remotely, not having to actually be in front of the screen or actually on the network, to be able to diagnose or update content. Lack of internal buy-in. So if you're trying to get a department to buy into creating content for the screens, kind of removing as much friction as possible to get them to do that. Integration issues, whether it's with network security or whitelisting, or just apps that you want to integrate with and use to pull content on screen. Back to the bandwidth point, we can on my team in solutions engineering, we can build custom apps to help pulling content that fits right for screen with tools that you've already developed and maintained. Um, and then other things like the UI and UX not being easier into enough for any level user to use, and just the ability to scale, because a campus is it's your own town. You have many different things and arms and departments that are working at the same time, and you need to be able to, especially with digital signage, be able to manage each aspect of that because they'll have different purposes. And just a couple just quick stats, just that are more eye-opening, where 86% of people claim to have an implementation process, yet 41% of decision makers don't actually know what that is. And I think it's just pointing out where, especially with digital signage, on the face of it, it seems like a simple um, rollout, and you can swallow the idea of rolling it out, but when you actually get to the plan and the logistics of it, um, you know a lot of the pieces of there's gaps there on what things look like in different scenarios. And then the next one's just 42% of people wanted more vendor support time, and only 40% took issue with limited consultation and implementation. So just not taking advantage of the support offerings that are available, and that especially here at Screen Cloud, that's what my team does, and part of the rollout is we're helping you um, take advantage of the rollout and have all of these things thought out for the different departments, and we help you really kind of be your partner with your digital signage network.
I would add as well too, just from folks that I talk to in the higher ed space, the lack of internal buy-in, while it's not a technical one, like some of the other ones are a product-related one, it is
Mhm.
very important because there are probably existing solutions in at least one or two departments that someone who might not even be there anymore tried implementing and that you still pay for. And if you're a central comms team or central student engagement team, it can sometimes be challenging to encourage these smaller departments to move off of what they were previously familiar with, or adopt a new solution altogether if they're not, chiefly content creators and you're now asking them to join a new platform. So our team can certainly help with that, but I'd say it's probably one of the top 2 to 3 that are on this page for sure that are not technical.
So it's not just the content. All that to say, it's not just the content, it's the system. You need a better system to be able to manage this network-wide digital signage. And like to Devin's point, having one-off um, homegrown solutions, or different networks, or things that aged, um, just doesn't scale, and doesn't work for 2025 and schools moving forward on a connected campus.
Awesome. Thanks, Casey. So the last question was, what does digital signage look like when it's done correctly? Or the other way to think about it is, okay, if I'm thinking about digital signage, what should I be looking for? And of course, I'm about to show you things that ScreenCloud does very well as well. But I encourage you to explore the entire market. Take these under consideration, because we've worked with a lot of universities and we understand the unique challenges. And there's certain features that are embedded within digital signage that are kind of make or break ones when it comes to the intricacies of higher ed and student engagement. So the very first one that I always want to call out is a solution that allows one network with individual empowered contributors. Right? You probably have a central comms team, whether it's internal comms or the Office of Student Engagement or donor engagement or anything like that. But you have a B school, you have a nursing school, you have residence halls, student unions, libraries, cafeterias, athletics, facilities, and they all might have their own individual content that they want to display to their audiences that pass through their domain. So you need a system that allows this centralized top-down content being pushed, but also encourages, and in an easy way, a non-technical, a non-comms focused way, allow these individuals in these different departments to easily contribute their own content on top. And more so to your benefit. So if you're the central comms person, you're not having to worry about every faculty's birthday across the entire campus. And that can be managed at the business school level, or every new class that's now available within the journalism school. One thing that's frequently overlooked until it comes up in conversation is branding. When you open things up to these individual contributors at the local level, you run the risk of, even if you're invested in a singular centralized solution, it can look disjointed because comms teams and designers know to use this color scheme and this font and this logo. But I'm not a comms person. I'm not a design person. I'm not a technical person. And until I was at ScreenCloud, I never thought about this. So you need a way that allows people to throw out the content that they want and it be consistently and automatically branded, so it all looks fluid and consistent. The big one when we think about contextual relevance is scheduling. And there's 2 components to scheduling. There's scheduling the content itself, so that no matter where it sits, the content availability is set at the point of upload. And then there's, of course, scheduling the content on a channel or on a screen itself too. And both are a little bit different. Feel free to book time with us later. We can show you what the difference is and how to utilize both. But let's use an example where you have one screen and it's in the student union. And you have 2 pieces of content that play for a minute each and rotate between the 2. But one of the audiences is for freshmen or student athletes that are only in there for 3 hours in the afternoon. Well, if you just have it rotating between the 2, you're effectively burning half of your digital signage investment showing messages to the wrong audience. So how can we schedule it so it's displaying general student information, except for between 3 and 5 when athletes are in there for, training sessions or conditioning or anything like that. You also need something that's connected to campus systems so that you're not in a tool building all your content again that you already have from scratch, or that you're limited to whatever content creation tools are in the CMS of your preferred solution. So whether this is integration into emergency alert systems you already have, so you can then further broadcast it onto the screens, integrating with the conference room TVs that you have in study rooms or library conference rooms, and all your social media feeds and all existing content tools like Canva, Dropbox, G Suite. And if you're looking at this from an internal or faculty comms perspective, SharePoint, First Up, Unily, Workflow, all these tools that you may already be invested in. How can we tap into those topics and channels, broadcast them, automatically format them to a screen? So again, you're not having to download, save, upload, and reformat on all the different screens and channels. And then just to plug KC a little bit here as well too, custom apps and integrations, which is one of our favorite parts. But there's always something that's bespoke or unique to you that you can think outside the box to utilize digital signage for. Casey, I'm not sure if you have anything else from your experience you want to add on there.
Yeah, just as an example, we had a college that wanted to, just for the internal IT teams and for their offices, they had displays in each of the offices, and they wanted to display who's in the office and who's out of the office depending on work schedules. So we synced with their Workday HR system, and now they're scaling it to all of their other departments. So even just things like that, or even like IT dashboards that you need internal, need to display internal metrics or analytics. We can connect with them, or even like campus life apps. Those are things that we can plug into.
Awesome. From an IT perspective, because I know we have a couple IT folks joining us today, but non-content focused, you need to have remote device management features that go beyond just maybe powering a device on and off. You need to be able to monitor in real time your devices, because Casey said it best, your campus is like a city. And in many cases, it is a city. If we're looking at like Penn State or Chapel Hill or something like that. So rather than sending an IT person out to every screen every time there needs to be an update or see what's on the screen, remotely managed from a singular location. And also locking down some things. Very prevalent on college campuses. If you have digital signage in a residence hall lobby or something where there's couches, you run the risk of students taking the remote and changing it to Netflix. And then your investment in digital signage is effectively wasted, because they're not going to switch it back to HDMI 1 to show you what's on the screen. So you need something that can lock down that HDMI port. And then again, remote fixes, applying patches. When we talk about internal buy-in, a lot of IT resistance originally is around this. So a solution like ScreenCloud and like some others that offer consistent hardware and easy to manage hardware. And then enterprise grade security, just like if you were S&P 500 in the corporate world, SOC 2 data, regional data storage, custom permissions, especially as you open up access for content to a bunch of local contributors, and on the same log, audit logs and proof of play if you're thinking advertising or selling advertising space on the digital signage. So what does it look like? And again, I'm about to show you some examples, not exhaustive. These are just some today. Maybe you can spur some ideas. And again, there'll be a QR code at the end. Feel free to scan it. In a non-salesy way, we can walk through whatever ideas you have, show you some other things that have been done, and maybe spur some creativity there. Wayfinding, whether it's directional arrows or showing you the different office levels within the English department. And again, showing room info. So who's got the room booked, what class is in this session, or the ability to book rooms entirely. Menu boards, whether they integrate to your point of sale system or they're just designed in Canva or Photoshop, and they're dynamic. So maybe if there's different menus throughout the day, or even entirely different vendors that use a vendor slot, how does that get scheduled and change automatically? Or if I'll pick on Chick-fil-A, if it's Sunday and Chick-fil-A is closed, how can we then leverage that existing menu board to then show content relative to the university, relevant to the university, rather than Chick-fil-A's menu if no one can order on a Sunday? So these are all just kind of the intricacies that we like to think of when we think of a digital signage screen and content strategy. Traffic and transit is one of my favorite, as someone who lived on, I should say lived on the bus, but but relied on the bus to live. when I was in school. So in this example, you can see you have the U, the RU bus, I think the V bus here, all the different wait times for the different stops, as well as a live traffic map of Chapel Hill. But what you can also do is have the bus times here, and presumably this sign is somewhere near a bus stop. And then in this box, you can have, hey, here's the latest performance at the Memorial Hall Performance Center or something like that, because my eyes are already engaged on the content I'm seeking out. So now you can hit me with information that I otherwise probably wouldn't know or know to seek for. And then we mentioned emergency alerts that we can integrate with CAP protocol, which I'm sure most universities probably already have in place. So that's table stakes when we're talking higher ed. Athletics is a great one, either for student engagement, student activation, or participation, whether it's Division I or it's club sports. But also when we think about donors and visitors on game day, there's a lot, and wayfinding can roll up into this. Donors, meals, the dynamic of campus changes on game days, especially if you're Ohio State, I'm sure, on a football Saturday. So we don't want to show them study tips when campus is full of rabid Buckeye fans. We want to show them the upcoming schedule, or season tickets are open now, but we don't want to roll out new screens entirely just for Saturday. So let's leverage the infrastructure we already have. And then, as you could assume, event info, whether it's AI generated QR codes and summaries of events that you just feed links of the events to, or nice designed content advertising the event.
One thing I'll note there too, real quick, Devin, on the event side. So if you have, we also do a lot of work with events companies or companies that do like conferences or one-time events. So if you have events on campus, digital signage can be a great tool, either to help with the digital experience of the space or display whatever information is, like if it's a charity event. So it's something too that can be used in an ad hoc scenario for events or things on campus.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give you some more ideas of what we've seen, although again, I should caveat it's not an exhaustive list. Some of my favorites on here are the interactive digital donor walls. Advertising is a popular one because when I was in college, you could actually buy physical space on the bulletin board that would be advertised in the student union. And there are people that pay for ScreenCloud through the advertising alone. So you can have 4 different zones, or 2 zones, or one main zone that is scheduled content that self-expires at the end of the purchased allotment. And live stream campus events, whether it's convocation to graduation or an important speech from the dean of students, or maybe a sporting event that otherwise wouldn't get as much attention as maybe Buckeye football or something. And so just recapping today, and then we'll open up to any Q&A. The 3 questions we came in here were, how do I actually reach today's students? And the one tip overall is to design for that A student engagement, because once you get past that spam filter and you have their attention, they're willing to listen, as long as it's relevant info, it's authentic info, and subtitles, of course. Don't forget subtitles. Why hasn't digital signage worked for me yet? Probably from decentralized systems, IT resistance, rightfully so, from the decentralized systems, hardware all over the place, hard to set up. And from a content perspective, not being able to strike the balance between central content and local contributors in a way that doesn't lead to disaster or asks a lot of the local contributors. And then what does it look like when digital signage is done right? You have a centralized network. The screens have a purpose. The screens should be multi-purpose, depending on how your audience changes dynamically throughout the day, the week, or the year. One hardware throughout, and empowered contributors at the local and central level, as well as integrated into your existing campus system, so that your investment into digital signage can be leveraged with your investment into these other systems as well. That's it for today from Casey and myself. You can scan this QR code to grab time with me or email here directly. Again, happy to answer any questions either on this call or afterwards. If you want to see some other ideas of what some universities have done or what is possible with ScreenCloud, Casey and I are always happy to have that conversation. We'll stay on for a little bit. If there's any questions, comments, ideas, thoughts, throw them in the chat or the Q&A, and we will be happy to answer them. Otherwise, if you have to go, of course, enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks. I guess one thing too, while we're here waiting for questions to come in, and I've worked with a couple colleges that were already on ScreenCloud, but we have an app called Playgrounds, and this could be a great tool if you're on a trial or if you want to play around with some custom functionality or features that you want to build a custom app for. That's a great place where you can build and play around, and AI is a great tool for that. Um, Especially when you're looking for like one-off scenarios where like the library is looking for um, one specific use case for a thing, and doesn't make sense to go through a big custom app development project. You can use the playgrounds for smaller use cases as well. Let's see.
And I will shamelessly plug Casey here because the work that him and his team do on some of these custom integrations and apps, even outside of higher ed, is really cool. So if you're an existing customer or you're thinking about Screen Cloud, you don't have to be an existing customer. I always encourage you to have a conversation with, especially Casey and his team, to see what's possible beyond what you've previously thought for digital signage.
Let's see a question from Jennifer. So the questions are: our setup is 14 years old. How well do you work with converting existing content? Well, I guess it depends on what the content is on the old system. It can be very easy and simple to get at least the base structure set up, and get that content set up, transferred over. And during that transition too, we would come up with a plan of, okay, we're going to deploy these screens and we're going to set up your studio and space and this certain way in channel structure. So there'd be an opportunity to like migrate and convert that old content to make sure it meets all the requirements that you need and fills the gaps, and then does all the great things that Screen Cloud does.
And Jennifer, we also have, it's relatively new. It's called Screen Cloud Launchpad. So it's our onboarding services that are geared towards enterprises, higher ed, healthcare systems, things where this challenge frequently comes up. Part of that is content building and content refreshing. So in your case, if you have content you want to keep using, but it needs a facelift or to be more in line with consistent branding, that's absolutely something that falls under that umbrella and something we frequently do.
Mhm.
Great question.
I guess if anyone is on here, just out of curiosity, um, what tools are you currently using for like internal communication, like Teams or Slack? Is there any on-campus chat or communication tools that you're using? Um, just thinking of how messages get sent around currently on campus.
And I guess I could apply both student engagement, but faculty and
Yeah.
internal as well.
Oh,
Google Chat. Okay.
okay, so you're using Google Chat currently to communicate. Well, that could be we have a Slack and a Teams integration currently. I haven't had a request or anything for Google Chat, but that could Google has tons of APIs, and I'm sure there's ways where if you had like a Google Chat thread, like Slack has like a Teams channel, we could build an integration to pull those messages in, like announcements or things that you need, like, hey, you there's going to be workers in the English section working on the AC, things like that you need to let faculty know that doesn't necessarily apply. We could tap into that type of network there.
So I'm seeing a lot of emails.
Mhm.
Teams is a great one, but a lot of folks that are just using emails. I'm assuming those are like distribution lists, things like that.
Too many platforms to count.
This is true, Brandon.
Yeah.
So yeah, distribution list. That's kind of a good jumping off point to jump into this, because there are, of course, intranet solutions that can incorporate that, but even those will still run into the same issue of, okay, well, one, do some of our faculty even have emails or devices to check if they're out in the field, if they're electricians or technicians on campus? Are they seeing emails in real time, or are they seeing things on screens when they walk in at 6:45 in the morning for 2 minutes in the office to put stuff in their locker, and 2 minutes in the evening when they grab stuff to go home? Same thing with students. When I was in college, I was on a million distribution lists because I signed up for every club on the right after convocation to get all the free stuff. And so every distribution list went to spam. So it's kind of a tricky thing, but that's an example of where digital signage can take and augment that message and better schedule
Well,
it that contextual relevance.
and Tom could put the link in here too, is we have our webhooks app. which you could build an automation. If mass email and distribution list is how, like, that's the current workflow, we can meet you there. You could create an automation with your mass email when it gets sent to whatever distribution list or endpoint, that it then gets sent to our webhook endpoint, and it will convert it into a message that's fit for screen. So take the text of it and summarize it, and we can even have a QR code to the full body of that message, or if there's a link in there. So that could be a pathway to get those in there really easily. And Schoology, just scrolling back, I've seen Schoology, and it would just depend on, I guess, what systems or things you want to pull from Schoology to display on screen. Um, but we'd be happy to look into that or explore those with you.
Awesome. Well, it looks like unless anyone else has any questions or other systems they're curious about with Screen Cloud, we will go ahead and wrap on the screen. Well, you'll get a follow-up email from us, so feel free to reach out. Again, whether you're an existing customer or potential user or just thinking digital signage years from now, we're always happy to have a conversation, explore what's possible, or otherwise point you in the right direction. So I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you, Casey, for joining me as well. And we will see you on the next webinar, hopefully.